My name is Harold Thompson, and I'm 85 years old now. Most mornings, long before the first birds start chirping or the distant hum of traffic picks up on the main road, I wake up in the same creaky wooden bed frame I've shared for over 50 years. The mattress sags a bit in the middle from all those decades of weight and worry. I shuffle down the hallway in my faded slippers, the floorboards groaning under each step like they're remembering every footfall, and settle into this old armchair by the front window. It's upholstered in a floral pattern that's worn thin from years of sitting, the arms polished smooth by my hands. I watch the first hints of dawn paint the sky in soft pinks and grays, filtering through the lace curtains Ellen hung back in the 70s. The house is so quiet these days, echoing with absence, that the memories crowd in like uninvited guests, settling heavy in my chest. I spent nearly all my working years convinced that what mattered most was forging a fortress against the uncertainties of life. Security, I called it back then, like it was some unbreakable shield. When I was 23, fresh-faced and full of that youthful fire, I married Ellen Marie Wilkins. She had those warm brown eyes that sparkled like polished chestnuts under sunlight, and a laugh that bubbled up soft and genuine, cutting through the din of any room. We met at a church picnic on a sweltering July afternoon in 1959, the air thick with the smell of fried chicken and fresh-cut grass, kids running wild with red popsicle stains on their shirts. I was just out of high school, starting my first real job at the textile mill down by the winding river, where the water churned brown from factory runoff. Ellen was already typing away as a secretary at the local elementary school, her fingers quick and precise on those old manual typewriters that clacked like gunfire. We didn't have two nickels to rub together, but our dreams felt as vast as the open fields around town. A cozy house with a wraparound porch painted white, a fenced yard blooming with wildflowers where children could chase fireflies on summer evenings, and a nest egg sturdy enough to weather the storms that had battered our parents' depressions, layoffs, the kind of hard luck that left permanent lines on their faces. Our son Michael arrived in the crisp spring of 1962, a tiny bundle with a tuft of dark hair and eyes that watched everything with quiet curiosity, like he was already figuring out the world's secrets. He rarely cried, content to coo softly while gripping my finger with surprising strength. 2 years later came Sarah, bursting into the world with a wail that echoed through the hospital halls, her cheeks pink and flushed, her little fists waving as if demanding attention from the start. She was always moving, always exploring, crawling toward the sunlight streaming through windows, babbling questions before she could even form words properly. I held them both in those sterile delivery rooms, the sharp scent of antiseptic mixing with the sweet new baby smell, and I whispered promises to myself in the quiet. They would never know the gnawing fear I carried from my own boyhood, the nights when my father sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands, staring at unpaid bills under the dim bulb, or my mother darning socks by lamplight to make them last another season. I vowed my family would stand on firmer ground, so I dove deeper into work. I volunteered for every overtime slot the foreman scribbled on the chalkboard in the break room, the air heavy with the acrid tang of machine oil and cotton dust that clung to your clothes like a second skin. When daylight hours fell short, I signed on for the graveyard shifts, stumbling home as the sun rose, my eyes gritty from exhaustion, my back aching from hauling crates under the harsh glare of overhead lights. Weekends blurred into side gigs, wrenching on rusted engines in our cracked driveway, the metallic clang of tools ringing out while neighborhood kids played stickball in the street, or climbing ladders to slap fresh paint on sagging houses, the fumes making my head spin in the relentless summer sun. Ellen never uttered a word of complaint. She'd rise with me in the pitch-black pre-dawn, her robe tied loosely, hair tousled from sleep, to brew coffee in our chipped percolator that gurgled like a contented brook. She'd pack my lunch with deliberate care, a thick ham sandwich on rye, an apple polished to a shine, and always a folded note slipped inside, her handwriting looping gracefully. "Come home safe, my love." Then she'd turn to the children, dressing them in hand-me-down clothes she'd mended neatly, teaching Michael his ABCs with colorful flashcards at the Formica kitchen table, bandaging Sarah's scraped knees from backyard adventures, and tucking them in at night with stories from dog-eared library books, her voice rising and falling like a gentle melody while I was miles away, lost in the rhythmic thrum of factory machinery. I kept reassuring her and convincing myself that this grind was temporary, a bridge to cross before we reached the promised land, just until we scraped together that down payment for a home of our own. Just until the kids had sturdy shoes that didn't pinch and winter coats with all the buttons intact. Just until Michael could stride into college without the shadow of debt looming. Just until the mortgage papers were stamped paid in full and we could exhale without that tightness in our chests. But each milestone only birthed another, stretching the horizon further, turning just until into a lifelong refrain that echoed in my weary bones. Time has a cruel way of accelerating when your eyes are fixed on the finish line. By Michael's high school graduation in 1980, I had clawed my way to shift supervisor, my name badge now gleaming with authority. The paycheck fatter, but the hours still devouring my days like a hungry beast. Sarah, with her wild curls and sketchpad always in hand, dreamed aloud of art school. Her drawings captured the world in vibrant strokes, sunsets bleeding orange across paper, family portraits where our smiles looked eternal. But I pulled her aside one humid evening in the living room, the fan whirring lazily overhead, and laid out the hard truths. Dreams were beautiful, but bills demanded practicality. She sat there, twisting a pencil in her fingers, her eyes downcast, and eventually nodded, switching her major to elementary education. I patted her shoulder, told her how proud I was, my voice gruff to hide the twinge of guilt. Relief washed over me quietly. The tuition would be manageable. Michael chose engineering, his path mirroring mine. Reliable, recession-proof, the sort of career that promised steady paychecks. He grinned and said he wanted to follow in my footsteps. I chuckled, pulling him into a rough hug that smelled of aftershave and mill residue. But inside, a small voice whispered that, like me, meant a life chained to clocks and quotas. We closed on the house in the fall of 1978. A sturdy brick rancher with 3 bedrooms, creaking hardwood floors, and a backyard shaded by a young maple sapling I planted myself, its leaves rustling like whispers in the breeze. The porch featured a wooden swing Ellen adored, its chains squeaking rhythmically as we tested it that first day, her head leaning on my shoulder while the kids raced through the empty rooms laughing. We chipped away at the mortgage with extra payments, watching the balance dwindle like melting snow. I opened a retirement account, dutifully depositing portions of each check, envisioning a future free from financial chains. On rare, quiet evenings, Ellen and I would sway on that swing, the air sweet with honeysuckle from the vines she'd trained along the railing, dreaming of post-retirement adventures. A road trip out west where the mountains pierced the sky like jagged teeth, or a lazy cruise down a winding river, stopping at quaint towns with antique shops and homemade pie. We'd chuckle about spoiling grandchildren, about lazy mornings with coffee and crosswords. But the brochures stayed in the drawer, gathering dust beside unpaid vacation requests. Then came that fateful Tuesday in November 2006, the sky heavy with iron-gray clouds that threatened sleet. Ellen was 68, still spry with her silver-streaked hair pinned back, humming an old hymn, Amazing Grace, I think, as she folded fresh towels in the living room, the fabric soft and warm from the dryer, scenting the air with lavender detergent. I was at the plant, buried in a stack of yellowed invoices under fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. The phone on my desk jangled harshly. It was Mrs. Hargrove from across the street, her voice trembling. Ellen had crumpled to the floor, clutching her chest. I dropped everything, tires screeching as I raced to the hospital, the wipers slapping against the first drops of rain. By the time I burst through the emergency doors, breathless and soaked, the doctor met me with a grave face. Massive heart attack. No pain, they said, but she was gone before the sirens even wailed. I collapsed into a plastic chair in that sterile hallway, the walls a sickly mint green, holding the thin gold wedding band they'd sliced from her swollen finger, the metal still warm from her skin. I stared at the scuffed linoleum tiles, flecked with gray specks like forgotten confetti, and clawed through my mind for the last time I'd truly seen her. Not a fleeting glance over rushed oatmeal at breakfast, not a peck on the cheek as I bolted for the door, but really seen her the way her eyes crinkled at the corners with quiet joy, the gentle curve of her smile when she caught me watching, the way she absent-mindedly tucked a stray lock behind her ear while reading the newspaper. The moments had been there, a tapestry of everyday miracles, and I'd let them unravel while pursuing phantoms of stability. The funeral unfolded in a blur of black dresses and whispered condolences, the chapel filled with the cloying scent of lilies and polished wood. Michael flew in from Seattle, his suit rumpled from the red-eye, his eyes red-rimmed as he hugged me tight. Sarah arrived from North Carolina in her minivan, her husband trailing with the grandchildren Emily, 6, with Sarah's curls, and little Jack, 8, fidgeting in his clip-on tie. We gathered at the graveside under a canopy of bare branches, the wind whipping cold through our coats as the minister intoned passages about eternal peace, his voice steady against the sniffles. Friends and neighbors approached afterward, clasping my hand. She was a saint, Harold, always baking pies for the church bazaar. She loved you all so much. She's with the Lord now. I nodded mechanically, my throat tight, but my mind screamed a single, piercing question. When was the last time we lingered on that porch swing, her hand in mine, watching fireflies dance in the twilight while crickets serenaded the night? The children lingered for a week, a fragile buffer against the yawning emptiness. We sorted through Ellen's belongings with careful hands, her dresses hanging like ghosts in the closet, patterns faded but still carrying her faint rosewater perfume, the stack of novels on her nightstand, pages dog-eared at favorite passages, the kitchen drawers crammed with recipes scrawled on yellowed index cards in her elegant script, apple cobbler, meatloaf, the chocolate cake she made for every birthday. One crisp afternoon, Sarah ventured into the dusty attic, cobwebs clinging to the rafters, and unearthed a forgotten photo album bound in cracked leather. We huddled on the sagging couch, the springs protesting softly, flipping through pages that smelled of aged paper and nostalgia. There I was in my prime, 30s, 40s, 50s, clad in grease-stained overalls or stiff-colored shirts, my face etched with fatigue, eyes often averted from the camera, as if already looking toward the next obligation. Ellen dominated the frames, cradling swaddled infants against her chest, her smile radiant, kneeling in the garden with soil-caked gloves, coaxing tomatoes to ripen red under the sun, presiding over birthday tables laden with homemade cakes, dripping icing, her laughter frozen in mid-burst. In shot after shot, her gaze rested on me soft, enduring, a silent anchor I'd taken for granted. That night, as the house fell silent and the grandfather clock in the hall ticked relentlessly, I roamed the darkened rooms like a specter. Michael's old bedroom retained echoes of boyhood, model airplanes suspended from the ceiling on thin wires, swaying gently in the draft. Kits we'd assembled together on rare Sundays when I wasn't called in. His baseball glove, leather softened by years, tucked on a shelf beside faded trophies. Sarah's space held her 11th grade watercolor, a serene river winding through autumn woods, colors blending like memories framed, and hung proudly after it won blue ribbon at the fair. The living room whispered of lavender from the sachets Ellen secreted in every drawer, their scent a ghostly embrace. I sank onto the couch where she'd collapsed, the cushions still bearing the faint imprint of her form, and allowed the regret to flood in unchecked, a tidal wave crashing over decades of denial. All those evenings I'd lingered at the mill, poring over ledgers while the family sat down to dinner without me, the clink of forks and chatter fading into the phone line when Ellen called to say goodnight. All the Saturdays sacrificed to strangers' broken transmissions, the sun beating down on my back while oil stained my hands black, instead of piling the kids into the old station wagon for a picnic by the lake, where water lapped at pebble shores and laughter bounced off the trees. All the moments Ellen began a story about a funny incident at school or a dream she'd had and I half listened, my thoughts drifting to production schedules or payroll worries. Cutting her short with a distracted nod, I directed a bulwark of bank statements, insurance policies, and paid-off loans, believing it impenetrable. But the true riches, the shared giggles over spilled milk at breakfast, the warmth of small bodies cuddled during thunderstorms, the quiet intimacy of Ellen's head on my shoulder as we watched the stars emerge, had eroded away, grain by grain, unnoticed until the landscape was barren. These past 17 years since her passing have unfolded in a gentler rhythm, marked by the slow turn of seasons outside my window. Michael phones every Sunday at precisely 4, his voice steady across the miles. Updates on his engineering projects that involve circuits and blueprints I barely comprehend. Tales of his daughter's piano recitals, where her fingers dance over keys like butterflies, or his son's triumphant soccer goals on muddy fields under cheering crowds. Sarah mails care packages, envelopes bulging with snapshots of family hikes through leafy trails, handwritten notes from the grandkids in wobbly crayon script. "Love you, Grandpa. Drawed a truck for you." They visit sporadically, transforming the house into a whirlwind of energy. Emily's infectious giggles as she bakes cookies in Ellen's old mixing bowls. Jack's boundless questions about my mill stories while we tinker in the garage. In those reunions, I hold them close, inhaling the scent of shampoo and life, and voice my love without reservation, clear, unwavering, a far cry from the gruff mutters of my younger self. Yet, in the velvet hush of midnight, when shadows pool in the corners and the street lamp outside casts a golden glow through the curtains, the regret resurfaces, sharp as a thorn embedded deep. It perches beside me in the armchair, whispering of irretrievable losses, stirring the embers of what-ifs. I yearn to traverse time, to grasp that ambitious young man by his oil-smeared collar, and impart the wisdom forged in solitude. Money ebbs and flows like the river by the mill, swelling in booms, receding in busts. Titles and promotions are fleeting badges, replaced by the next eager climber. Bank balances fluctuate with markets and misfortunes. But the ordinary treasures, the Tuesday when Ellen unveiled new kitchen curtains with a flourish, their fabric billowing like sails, the Saturday when Michael, glove in hand, pleaded for just one more pitch in the backyard as dusk painted the sky purple, the afternoon when Sarah bounded in with a still damp drawing, colors vivid and alive. Eager for my praise, those bloom only in their season, blink and they're withered, consigned to albums and aching recollections. Here I am at 85, gazing out at the maple tree I rooted the year Michael was born, now a towering sentinel with bark furrowed like my own skin, branches arching protectively over the roof, leaves whispering secrets in the wind. The street remains familiar, lined with houses where generations have cycled through. The kids I once watched pedaling bikes now ferry their own offspring to school. And in this twilight clarity, I grasp a truth I wish had illuminated my path sooner. Genuine security isn't tallied in ledgers or locked in safes. It's woven from the threads of connection, the voices that bridge distances with weekly calls, the memories that glow warmly rather than sting, the deliberate choices to prioritize presence over pursuit. It's in the hands held, the stories shared, the moments savored amid life's relentless march. If these words reach you while your world still pulses with possibility, if your children still barrel toward you at day's end with tales of playground triumphs, if your partner still seeks your gaze across a crowded room, if evenings stretch ahead unclaimed by endless to-dos, heed this plea from an elder who's navigated the long road. Pause the relentless chase before it devours the now. Years cascade like waterfalls, swift and unyielding. The hearts entwined with yours, they're not eternal in this form. Set aside the ledger occasionally. Step onto the porch as the sun dips low, painting the horizon in fiery hues. Absorb the small narratives unfolding around you. Clasp the offered hand. Feel its warmth pulse against your palm. Behold them, truly behold, as if they embody the universe's core essence. For one twilight, swifter than anticipated, the swing will creak empty beside you, and you'd barter your kingdom for one more unremarkable evening together. I've traversed that bridge, Spare yourself the crossing. Embrace the quiet abundance before silence claims it all.